With us still in the midst of an NBA offseason, I think it's a great time to bring in a new series onto the channel, ranking the top 10 players of the 2023 NBA season, and with the use of film and stats to find out the most prominent question that everybody wants to know the answer to is, who was the best player in the NBA this year? However, before diving into that head first, I think it's fair that I illustrate my criteria and outline to you guys first so you guys can better gauge how this list was concocted. Rule number 1, players whose rank had to at least play half the season of 41 games. Rule number 2, this list will be based on the production that the players gave this season, anything that happened the prior year, and it's not based on any projections going into the next season because it's only going to be based on the performance of the player for the 2022-23 season. Rule number 3, I also value a player's impact to a championship team. Now you may be asking, what do I mean by this? When I'm ranking these players, I'm ranking them based on their on-court impact and how much of that impact is actually going to lead a team to win a championship, meaning I'm basing it on their championship value. So of course, to evaluate a player's impact can't strictly be done by looking at the statistical data, but also doing a great deal of measuring the value to the best of my abilities by watching and figuring out through countless of players and film that I had to go through to see who gave their best impact to their team to win an NBA championship. And final rule before we get into this is I'm also looking at these players when they're on the court playing. So availability isn't factored that much into this list because I'm trying to see when they were playing, even if they played hurt, who gave me the best value as an individual to win an NBA championship. So if a player was out due to an injury, as long as they played over the 41 games, I put as a benchmark, and if they played through it, it makes it easier to gauge on a clean slate for all these players when they were at their best, who gave their teams the best chance of winning a championship. So with that all out of the way, let's kick it off with the number 10 spot where I ended up placing Jayson Tatum. I believe Jayson Tatum has a pretty strong argument to actually be higher up on the list, but I believe him at 10 fits the best. Jayson Tatum made some significant strides this season, specifically his finishing and his ability to generate rim pressure. Tatum has always struggled being able to keep his balance on drives to the rim. If he got any bump, it would throw him out of rhythm and make him miss makeable layups. Now that he's become more of a strength creator, actually looking for that contact and exploiting off that to score at the rim has greatly helped his finishing numbers, which is why this year Tatum saw an uptake in free throw rates. He attempted 8.4 this year, easily a career high. His 3-point percentage was right around league average, but he shot threes with a high degree of volume and difficulty that still warranted the respect of defenses on his pull-ups and step backs, despite how inconsistent it could be game to game. Off the ball, his game still provides a ton of value as well. He's a very good cutter, catch and shooter, and attacking closeouts. Once he receives the ball from a tilted defense, he keeps the advantage going, either with a quick decision to swing the ball to the open man or score it himself once he receives the pass back to himself. Jayson Tatum being one of the best offensive players in the NBA is already not fair, but he's also one of the league's best wing defenders. He provided solid rim protection in the back line, constantly making good reads to cut off opposing offensive players. And he's really good as a nail helper, where I believe he provides the most value on defense and is a very strong rebounder, closing down possessions. Tatum's weaknesses, I believe, is in his mid-range shooting. For as much as he goes into that in-between game, he still isn't efficient at it for it to become a legitimate counter and make him that bona fide 3-level scorer, which I think goes into his second weakness of his inconsistencies. Because if Tatum isn't having a good 3-point shooting game and if the paint is walled off, Tatum can have some really bad scoring games. And for as good as his passing and playmaking and defense have become, it's not enough value to help his argument to me to have him. At number 9, I have LeBron James. LeBron is a very hard player to rank, especially this version of him, because I can see myself having him as low as 11 or 12, or even having him as high as 6 or 7, so I decided that 9 was the best spot to put him at, even despite his athleticism taking another hit as he now ages to 38 years old. He still remained one of the league's best drivers and finishers. LeBron still has one of the best NBA frames, so once he takes the approach to actually attack downhill, he still has great footwork around the basket and can finish in a multitude of ways that very few can actually stop him. That brute strength is still there, so he's still able to punish mismatches if a defense decides to switch a smaller player on him. And it's not always from a perimeter look. He also does it from the post. As he ages, it seems his post game just becomes more refined because he's looking for an easier basket, and when he's sealing his man in the post, he can immediately catch the ball and finish. However, as he ages, it hasn't just been from the post. His game has also gotten better as he's become a really good cutter. Despite the decline of physical capability, he still found a way to provide amazing value as a cutter, mainly because LeBron loves to stampede cut on his cuts to the basket, where he already starts moving before the ball is swung to him and has the momentum riding with him to the basket. And he's still an elite level playmaker with a high level decision making and processing speeds. LeBron still rarely makes bad passes, and it constantly generates open 3-point looks on drives to the rim. Being able to hit the roller, and even if you ramp up that defensive pressure, LeBron is able to scan over the defense and find a weak link that eventually leads to quality shots for his teammates, still rounding him out to be one of the more premier scorers in the NBA, despite the loss of athleticism and the 3-point shot tendency that really plays his efficiency and his overall offensive output. He still remained as one of the best playmakers in the NBA and just overall one of the best offensive players. At number 8, it was tough, but I landed with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, despite the Lakers getting swept in the Western Conference Finals, had one of the best defensive performances throughout a playoff run in NBA history. He legit put a lid around the rim whenever he was in the vicinity, mainly because of his ability to always anticipate and have great timing on where the ball is going and send it flying the other way. He averaged over 3 blocks a game these playoffs, and this shouldn't be shocking news either that he contested far more shots than just 3 blocks a game. AD plays great defense without fouling and holding up his verticality to always alter shots around the rim. Despite his mobility not being how it was in 2020 or 2019, his length and ranginess still holds value to contest shots on the perimeter against guards, and his rotations from the help side to guarding the pick and roll and then back to rotating is some of the best I've seen in the league. Honestly, the best to me personally. Still has one of the best hands in the NBA to muck up passing lanes, making him to me the best defender in the world right now. On offense, it's what really holds him back from being a top 5 player in the NBA to me for some time, because he's not as nearly as good as he used to be. He's still one of the best play finishers in the NBA. Him as a roller still demands a lot of attention on defenses because of the threat he brings as a finisher in that fashion as a lob threat. Anthony Davis is one of the best lob threats in NBA history. Pretty much throw the ball up near the rim and somehow AD is going to be able to catch it one hand or two hands and finish it over the top of literally anybody that you can mention. Because he's such a massive screener, he's able to get the pick and roll ball handler defender stuck on the screen while still being able to quickly roll to the open space and finish it. It's honestly an amazing thing to watch on tape. Whether it's on or off the ball, Anthony Davis just finds ways to finish very effectively around the rim. However, his self-creation at this point leaves a lot to be desired, and it really was highlighted during this playoffs where he wasn't able to score efficiently through the post, nor when he tried operating in his face-up game in isolation, which meant a lot of the times where unless his jumpers were actually hitting from the outside, AD at this point isn't giving you a whole lot as a self-creator, which holds back a lot of value from the offensive end that matters, which made me come to the decision of placing him at number 8. At number 7, I have Kevin Durant. KD is another player who's getting up there in age, and despite the injuries over the past year just keeps zapping him of his physical prowess, KD still remains pretty comfortably, to me, a top 10 player in the NBA, and had a strong argument to even place him top 5. His scoring prowess, specifically his ability to shoot in the mid-range, is probably the best it's been in his career. He still possesses a 7'5" wingspan with a high release point, so even if you are right there with him and he isn't creating that separation, sometimes KD just shoots over you like you're not even there to make the shots. It's why he's so deadly in so many different ways as a scorer, in the pick and roll, in isolation, post-ups. KD in each aspect is very efficient. That is actually scary. However, KD's effectiveness in the playoffs these past 2 seasons hasn't boded the best success, you can say, relative to his regular season standards. That's because of KD's weak handle and his inability to pressure the rim. KD just isn't able to create enough separation between him and his defenders anymore as he used to, which has defenders playing more tightly on him longer and forcing him left more times than not, where you can see him bobbling with the ball with that added pressure. And since he isn't pressuring the rim either, and more primarily playing in the mid-range, now it makes his game far more predictable and less versatile. It gives defenders more confidence to get up under him when he's dribbling or in the post, which is why even with the length advantage KD has, he can still take some pretty unorthodox shots against the defenders. These weaknesses had to hold him back from that prestige top 5, but even with those weaknesses, the value I believe that he provides as a scorer on off the ball with that plus defense still had him making the top 10 pretty comfortably, and I landed him with the 7th spot. At number 6, I ended up with Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic practically has the ball all the time. He led the NBA in time of possessions, 9.1 seconds. Luka is one of the best passers we've ever seen, and he combines that with such unique scoring on all 3 levels that makes him truly in the argument to being the best offensive player in the NBA. There isn't one pass Luka doesn't like or won't attempt, despite defenses sending aggressive coverages at him at times. A team's game plan for the 48 minutes when guarding Luka is just to send a double team at all times, and it doesn't throw him out of rhythm. Luka's unfazed, and that's because he has so many passes in his repertoire that he uses in any difficult situation to bail himself out and create a great opportunity for his teammates. This skill set is primarily highlighted in his pick and roll usage, where he can dissect the defense with the ball on a string and create openings that might seem like it was created out of thin air. It doesn't help either that he's 6'7" and can see over the top of defenses to scan the court and make those reads. That's just an unprecedented level of high IQ from a player that very few possesses nor even have the willfulness to do. It blends well with his scoring too. As I stated, Luka's a legit 3-level scorer. He's able to pressure the defenses at the rim, from the mid-range, and all the way back to the 3-point line, with a plethora of counters to throw at a defense when they try taking away one of those aspects to throw him out of rhythm. Which is why Luka, even when they try to take away the paint, Luka can pretty much comfortably take those step back threes. If you try to play too tight on him, he keeps the ball on a string, rarely gets the ball stolen from him or bobbles it, and because he's a big guy for his size, he uses that to muscle his way to the rim, and also uses that to back his defenders from the post, where he can score from the rim or shoot fadeaways at the mid-range for 2 points. Luka on the ball is truly one of the best players, not just for today's standards, but in NBA history. Truly one of the best heliocentric players we've ever seen. At number 5, I landed with the reigning MVP in Joel Embiid. Embiid, from a statistical standpoint, this regular season saw a jump. He averaged 33 points in the regular season with good efficiency and led a top 10 defense to help the 76ers capture a top 3 seed that landed him with the MVP honors. Embiid's scoring has always been the best package he offers as a player, and this past season, taking that leap, he did arguably make himself the best scorer in the NBA during the regular season. Because of his size and strength, there isn't any player, if any, that can match up with Embiid one-on-one and actually find consistent success against him, which is why he's always at the free throw line, because he will mix in fakes to throw off the defenders, to which would get him to the line, which he shoots at an 85% clip. He's just too big and strong when he attacks his defenders in the paint that he usually forces defenses to send that extra man to help. Despite being a center, Embiid has great fluidity in his moves that at times it seems you're watching a wing or guard at work. Also, him being more of a screener has helped his scoring with the pairing of him and James Harden. They truly were an imposing duo. Embiid as a scorer is truly one of one with his skill set at his stature. Sadly, it hasn't translated the best to the playoffs for a multitude of reasons, mainly because of his injuries and his passing ability. Embiid has gotten hurt in the last 3 straight postseason runs in the first round, which tanks already the best overall product he can give when healthy, and his passing ability, which has improved the past season, still lacks some glaring holes that the Celtics exploited mightily. His lack of vision as a passer and processing speed truly holds him back the most value he can provide, and overall as an offensive centerpiece for an offense. As we saw in this year's playoffs, teams are willing to send full-on double teams to Embiid, which inherently should give the 76ers the advantage. The problem is, if Embiid isn't able to make those reads quick enough before a defense can intercept and keep them on their heels, then this brand of strategy against Embiid will always hurt the 76ers' overall output during the postseason. To cut Embiid some slack, this is also due to the personnel that the 76ers have. So unfortunately, Embiid cannot be any higher, which had me landing him at the 5th spot. Still an impressive feat for a big, arguably to be the best scorer in the league. Still some positive value as a passer, and to me, an elite defender, a top 10 in that regard, landing him at number 5. At number 4, might be a shocker for some, I landed with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi, who to start this season did not look like the Kawhi of old we were accustomed to, still had to shake off the rust after having to sit out a whole year of basketball. Once he shook off that rust, though, and was playing consistent minutes in games, Kawhi Leonard looked just as good as he was in the 2021 season. Kawhi, being such a strong isolation scorer on all 3 levels, is what truly fuels him as a scorer to me. He doesn't have the length or height like KD to just shoot over defenders with ease, but he replaces that with honestly better skill sets, with having a better ball security, keeping the ball away from harm's way when he's dribbling to his spots, and when defenders are more aggressive against him and has the strength, he just bumps them out of the way to create separation for his jump shots. Kawhi isn't a player that strings together the most complex moves to create separation, but he utilizes the ones he has to the maximum, making him truly, in my opinion, the best scorer in the NBA due to how resilient against all types of defensive coverages you can throw at him, which really translates well in playoff setting, playing against the best defenses other teams have to offer. Even though injuries have zapped away all defense caliber Kawhi used to be, he still provides enough value on that end to remain a plus. And being the best scorer in the NBA who adds value away from the ball and as a playmaker, Kawhi ended up placing 4th on the list. For number 3 was really tough to decide on, but for this season, I ended up landing with Steph at number 3. Steph still remains, in my opinion, the most dangerous offensive player in the NBA, just off the sheer fact that his all-time great shooting. Being able to shoot from 35 feet out on a consistent basis and cash it out, always have defenses guarding him in ways that we've never seen before. It's the reason I give him the label of a walk-in 4-on-3 advantage, because he is constantly creating advantages for his team with and without the ball at such a high rate that it begins to just truly affect how defenses guard him, to the point where he's just the most dangerous offensive player in the NBA, the greatest shooter ever, and while also being the greatest off-ball player ever. Truly isn't something that should be fair. With his added weight, it gives him more strength on his drives as well to make him a far more imposing finisher. Overall, I still think he's at worst the second best offensive player in the NBA that adds plus value on defense depending on certain lineups and matchups, which landed me at the number 3 spot for Stephen Curry. At number 2, I placed Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis, in my opinion, is still the best rim finisher in the NBA and the most dangerous and intimidating threat in transition. Just a locomotive when he's attacking downhill with blinding speeds and change of directions that it truly is impossible to slow him down without the proper personnel. With his patented Eurostep and spin moves are the marquee moves he used to be crafty and finish over the top of defenders. It doesn't help either that he's actually a pretty good passer, as well as that he leverages that rim pressure to create high quality 3-point attempts for his teammates on his drives, creating that driving kick game that fuels the Bucks offense. Really, the only issue about Giannis' offense is his shooting and shot selection. If Giannis wasn't so insistent at shooting threes and mid-range shots at the rate he does, it would probably, number 1, undoubtedly help his efficiency, and it would stop bailing out defenses, because this style of scoring at times just hurts the Bucks offense, and it just plays into what the other team wants. He had a league average mid-range last year in the 2022 season, but it completely fell off a cliff this past season. So even this counter he would throw at defenses was rendered useless and ineffective in the half court. His lack of half court scoring versatility truly hurts him and the overall team's offense, because when the team is solely focused on only that aspect in his scoring and he's providing nothing else, and when the other team has the proper personnel at playing Giannis's scoring can prove to be ineffective in a lot of ways in the postseason. That was, I do believe, was showcased in this past postseason. He still more than makes up for it on the defensive end, where I believe he's one of the 10 best defenders in the NBA, one of the league's best rim protectors. Giannis has amazing instincts on help side to just erase shot attempts near the rim. Being a high-level rim protector on a night-in, night-out basis isn't easy, especially when you're tasked with such a high amount of offensive load like Giannis is. Giannis having one of the best motors in the league, always on go on defense, not letting up any effort in the slightest, is one of my favorite aspects on defense about him. Giannis still had an MVP level season. I still think you can make a very strong argument for him to be the best player in the world and have him at the number 1 spot. I just think the guy that I have number 1 had a better argument this year. And finally, to talk about the most prestigious list on this list, I decided at my number 1 spot to go with Nikola Jokic. Jokic had one of the best offensive seasons in NBA history. Was historically efficient during the regular season on his volume, still being the league's best passer, playmaker, one of the best off-ball and offensive rebounders too. Jokic just doesn't have any glaring flaws on offense, if any, making him, in my opinion, the best offensive player in the NBA that presents the most mismatches to defenses that you can offer. Everyone saw in the playoffs the amount of defensive coverages that teams would throw at Jokic and switch it so many times during a game, yet not one proved to be effective enough to truly throw him off. Him being an all-time level passer and playmaker, creating tons of advantages just because of him making passes to open teammates, sometimes don't even realize that they're open, and then he's still one of the league's best scorers. It's just unfair. His size plus IQ package is honestly probably one of the best in league's history, and being an elite outside shooter, especially from the mid-range at his position, is value that I honestly probably will never again see from a center, making him, in my opinion, the best player in the NBA. Now, with that all done, I want to thank you guys for watching this long video of me giving my list and small breakdown of each player in my top 10. Please let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about my list and what certain changes that you would make based on my criteria. With that being said, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the post notification bell to always keep you posted whenever I drop more videos. And I hope all of you have a great, blessed rest of your day.